Blog Talk Radio.
Hey everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Tuesday morning, March the 8th, and I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I'm just putting the chat room open now. I'm just opening it up here. And, glad to be here and be able to do these shows, Hopefully it's helping somebody out. I know it helps me out. It's my journey, and I'm a survivor, and I just, find information that I find helpful for myself, and then I just thought I'd just pass it on to what I find to other people. You have to listen to my shows at your own discretion. Everybody does. I'm talking about abuse, and I'm talking about, I don't sugarcoat it. I just tell it like it is, and so people may find my show comfortable. The topics of abuse, are sensitive. It's sensitive material. So you have to know what's good for you to listen to. So everybody has to listen at their own discretion and know what's good for you to listen to, because it ultimately is your choice. It's your ears and your choice. So if you find that this information makes you uncomfortable, you have to turn the show off, right? That's your discretion. The young people, that you have permission to listen to my show, and that's because I care about children, and I believe children should be protected at all times. And I think especially when there's a chat room there, and anytime you're online, you need to keep yourself safe. And so I just promote that safety by saying, everyone under the age of 18 needs to have permission to listen to my show. Get someone who's older, who's an adult, who can help you make that decision, right? Whether or not you should be listening, because there's a lot of adult, mature material on my shows. I'm talking a lot about really heavy-duty situations, and about abuse. So I think that young people, may not be age appropriate for really young people, and I think that you should have someone listen to the show with you, and they can help you decide whether or not you should be listening, right? So thanks, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows, and I just, that's the whole issue. I'm just a person who's just, I just want to be one more voice. And so that's when I started doing these shows, November 2009, that was my goal, was just to be one more voice out here speaking out against child abuse, speaking out against human rights abuses, and making some noise, right, just to be one more voice. And so that's why I'm doing these shows. And my good friend Gypsy Witch is here. Hello, good morning, and good night to you, because you're down in Australia. And this is, it's good to be able to be a voice, and hopefully it's offering people a little bit of validation. If you're a survivor and you've been through some of this stuff, not everybody's been through the same things, but it's another voice out here saying, you can do it, and there is help and there is hope. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe that. Always in the back of my mind, that's what kept me alive, was just feeling that, someday, I could be free from this pain, because, it's a harsh situation for people who have grown up abused or been abused in their lifetime, right? It's horrific. And so that's why I wanted to be one more voice out here, just to help survivors to know that they need to reach out, and they need to get help where they can, whether it's a counselor or therapist or a good friend or somebody, but make sure that you don't suffer on your own and suffer alone, and, get some help, right? And, to speak out against abuse. So that's why I'm doing these shows. So you have to listen at your own discretion. And we'll get right into this topic here this morning. We finished off with the Hope for Us information, hopeforus.com. That's a great website. hopeforsurvivors.com. It's Hope for Us. She's written a whole bunch of web pages there, and she's actually currently back online posting new information and everything like that. But she's got a great website there. And she has, if you go through there, there's so much good information on the internet, all kinds of stuff. I highly recommend everybody go and check that website out. It's www.hopesurvivors.com. hopeforsurvivors.com. We finished up there. I just wanted to kind of go through some of that material on shame, and this next particular article we were looking at already, we're about halfway through, looking at dysfunctional families and different roles within the dysfunctional families and whatnot, from mudrashram.com. And that's www.mudrashram.com, mudrashram.com, and then /dysfunctional family 2.html. So I'm going to pop this link into the chat room. And we're about halfway through, left off at the section of boundaries, and we were talking about this at night on my show, Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, because it was mainly information about the dysfunctional family, but it switches over to a lot of survivor stuff, which is boundaries and whatnot, and that's why I wanted to sort of switch this over to a morning topic for One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, so that's what we're doing, and because I find this information very, very helpful for myself. A question of boundaries is where we left off on this particular article, about halfway down through the page. And this was written by George A. Boyd, and this material, that's his material, and I'm just reading from it, and you can check this out yourself. And I'm just kind of adding my own stuff in there as I go, right? But I'm just reading from this webpage, and it says, a question of boundaries. In dysfunctional families, parents violate the boundaries of their children. Parents from these families do not respect their children's personal freedom and privacy. They discount their children's feelings, do not honor their attempts at independent thinking and decision-making, and do not allow them to experience their impulses toward creativity, spirituality, and self-actualization. These deficits in the children's development are revisited by problems in their adult relationships and careers, and with raising their own families. And so that's where we left off. When parents disrespect a child's boundaries, the child's sense of self, his or her autonomy, self-respect, feelings of effectiveness, and of making a difference are compromised. In place of a healthy sense of self, children may come to feel that they are damaged goods, unworthy, inferior, inherently bad, incompetent, stupid, or ugly, and this negative conditioning limits what they believe they are capable of doing, being, and having throughout their lives. One of the central priorities of the recovery process must be to reconstruct this damaged self-esteem, and I think this is really important. This is where, 4 years ago, I was sitting around still in the same kind of, feeling the same way about the abuse that I suffered and the dysfunction in my family that really destroyed my family. And it was just tearing me up inside. You know what I mean? And I had a lot of self-esteem issues. I'm still working through a lot of those. I still have some, I'm sure. I'm not, I'm still working on it. But the thing is I'm so much better than I was, because 4 years ago I actually started doing a lot of self-help, obviously, and I started doing a lot of affirmations, like positive affirmations. Like I would just look in the mirror and I'd just be like, I do love myself, because I would be sitting around at night, especially after work, after a whole day of being out amongst people, having a good day, whatever, ignoring my feelings and just going on with the day. And then I'd get home, and throughout the evening, the feelings would come back, the feelings of, I guess mostly grief and sorrow, and just feeling down about the way I was treated as a child, and never really being able to get in touch with a lot of the feelings that I was feeling, right? Because I was just pushing them down all the time, and it was just tearing me up. And so I started doing a lot of positive affirmations and started saying, no, I do love myself. I do care about myself. I do deserve to be here. And I just go through these little positive statements to myself, when I would speak them out loud, and I would start to, and at first some of them I actually didn't really believe, what I mean? Like, well, no, you're smart. You're not, I'm not stupid, and I'm worth it. I'm worth it. You know what I mean? Things like this. And in the back of my mind, sometimes I'll be thinking, right, okay. Because that's the conditioning that was put on me as a child, that I was worthless, not wanted, I was stupid, I was never going to get anywhere, this is the whole, I was told that as a child quite a bit, and even as a young adult, that I was never going to get anywhere, and I was just worthless and stupid. And, you hear that enough, especially throughout your whole life growing up, from childhood all the way through to the teen years and then into the young adult years. You hear enough of that stuff and start to almost believe it. You know what I mean? Even though part of me would say, oh, that's not right. But the other part of me would say, well, maybe I am. You know what I mean? And so I really had to do a whole lot of self-help work just to get myself to learn that I do love myself. And that I should care about myself. You know what I mean? And that I deserve to have a good life. So I did a whole lot of that already. But that's important because, like this George A. Boyd says, one of the central priorities of the recovery process must be to reconstruct this damaged self-esteem. So, I think it's important that we have to go back and we have to undo all that damage. We have to try to make that right. And there's nobody else that can really do that for us. My parents can't do that for me. Like my mom is long gone. She's passed away 16 years ago. And even if she was still here, she was so toxic and so, well, she was mentally ill, first of all. She was diagnosed manic depressive years and years and years ago when I was a child, right? And so she had all kinds of issues. And so would she ever have been able to say the proper things to me or be the proper mother to me? Probably not. I could wish for that my whole life, and would it ever become a reality? Probably not, because my mother was mentally ill and had a whole lot of problems. So she was never going to be able to be or say or do the right things for me. You know what I mean? So I have, I can't go back to my parents and try to get this stuff that I missed out on and try to get them to redo the damage, because it's not possible in my case. It might be in somebody else's case. But my dad is almost 90. He's mentally ill. He's borderline schizophrenic, which I believe he's more schizophrenic than borderline. He always has been. But he manages to pull off, he was able to work. He was able to hold down jobs, But when he would come home, everybody was the devil, and he was going to kill us all. And he was an abusive man. He was a very unhealthy, unwell man. And so, would I ever get what I needed from him? No. He's 90. He's almost dead. I mean, he's had a few surgeries this last year. He's not doing well, and I've cut all ties with him because of it. He's so toxic. I just can't take it anymore. I decided that I was not going to allow myself to be treated, abusively anymore by this man. That's what I put my foot down and I said, that's it. Enough is enough. And so boundaries are a huge, huge issue, and that's exactly what happens to many survivors is that we don't, growing up abused, or even if we weren't abused and we just grew up in these dysfunctional homes, we may not know what boundaries even are or even how important they really are. So I just think it's important to learn this stuff, and I'm not the expert on this, but that's why I read this material out, because I'm learning. So I hope somebody finds this interesting and finds this helpful. This is from George A. Boyd from mudrashram.com, www.mudrashrem.com. And this information to me is very helpful. It says boundaries are boundaries are broached in different ways. In the physical or sexual abusing family, the child's physical boundaries are violated. In families where there is insanity or serious illness of a parent, the child's emotional boundaries are infringed upon, and the child may be forced into the role of surrogate spouse for the other parent or required to act as the ill parent's caretaker. In the substance abusing family, the volatile and immature behavior of an intoxicated parent creates confusion about appropriate boundaries in interpersonal roles. As there are no models of rational or predictable behavior, there is breakdown of honest communication, a lack of emotional stability and nurturing by the parents, and a lack of safety that would permit trust, self-disclosure, and intimacy to develop. And they said in the fundamentalist, dogmatic, or authoritarian family, parents trespass on children's rights to think for themselves, mental boundaries. They also violate children's rights to make their own decisions, which is volitional boundaries, to interpret and act upon their own conscience, moral boundaries, to experience and express their innate spirituality, creativity, and quest for meaning and value, spiritual boundaries. So all these boundaries that, can be completely broken, and just very dysfunctional if people have not been, shown how to have proper boundaries in their life. If their parents didn't show them, or their caregivers, whoever was looking after the child and raising the child, did not create a home with, an environment with healthy boundaries, then the child is really not. How would they ever know? That they need to do this, right? That's the issue. Is it's not something. It's a learned behavior. It's something that we need to learn, and if we don't get that from our parents and caregivers or anybody who is raising us, then we do need to go and kind of get this done on our own as adults, right? I think it's just really important, because otherwise, it kind of sets up how you're going to allow yourself to be treated. That's why lots of people who have been abused as children go on to relationships where they're abused again by an intimate partner. And it's because they don't know how to set the boundaries, right? They don't know how to say, okay, I'm not going to allow anyone to mistreat me, because I deserve so much better, and no one deserves to be abused, so therefore I will not allow someone to abuse me. But a lot of times, people that don't know how to set boundaries, they're unsure and unclear about how to go about doing that. Sometimes they even know that they should get out of the abusive relationship, and they stay in it anyway, because they feel like, well, I don't know how to go about getting myself help. I don't know how to deal with this. So they just take it, just thinking that that's life, that's the way it is. That was my mother. She had every opportunity to leave my dad, right? I mean, she wasn't tied up down in the basement. She was tied up in her mind is where she was tied up. I mean, she was tied up thinking that she was stuck in this situation and there was no way out of it, which she wasn't. I mean, my older siblings, who were quite a bit older than myself, when they got to be older, especially older teens, 16, 17 years old, they would tell her, they'd say, Mom, we'll get you an apartment. They weren't the most reliable kids, obviously, because, growing up in the home that we grew up in, there was no one was encouraging anybody to be reliable. So it's like, my brothers were quite often in jail, in and out of jail and prison even, and weren't necessarily holding down jobs. So my mom probably thought, well, a lot of good that's going to do me. But the thing is she didn't even have to rely on her sons to do that. She could have got help from social, from the social services, you know what I mean? Because here she is, a mother of 7 children, which 2 had already moved out of the house by the time all this was going on. So that left 5 children in the home. And here the abuse was just rampant, and they were brought up on charges. At that point, my mother could have said, look, I need help for my children, I need help for myself, I'm being abused as well. And, you know, instead of that, my parents just thought, no, this is what we do, we stick it out. My parents were born in 1920s, and that's my parents. Well, most people's grandparents were born in 1920s. My parents were born in 1920s. My grandparents were born in the late 1800s. I mean, most people's great-great-great-grandparents were born in the 1800s. My grandparents were born in the 1800s. So, you know, that tells you there isn't a whole lot of education in there for, you know, just within a couple of generations, right? My people come from the 1800s, my direct line, like grandparents, and my great-grandparents were born in 1850, so that just tells you there's only 3 generations from 1850 to 2011 for me. So there wasn't any kind of new ideas or new thoughts, or it was all, hey, no, we just abuse and we take abuse and that's all we do. Because my people were abusive. They came from abusive lines of people. These were people from very ignorant families, very back hills, backwoods, Nova Scotia, who came originally from England, from York. And, you know, they had no education, period. And that's my parents, my grandparents, and their parents. They were very ignorant. That's from the 1850s. There's only 3 generations. So, you know, it just tells you, it's no wonder my the way they did, right? They were completely warped and twisted in their thinking, and it's because their parents were completely warped and twisted in their thinking. So I can kind of see what happened, but does it excuse it away? No, because the courts, my mom could have got help, and had she really cared about her children, which she really should have, you know, she would have told the courts, look, you know, okay, I've been abusive too, but that's because I'm out of my head, because I'm being abused. I was abused as a child. Now my husband's abusing me. I want help for my children. I want help for myself. I want out. This man is gone. I mean, she could have divorced my dad, and she could have got help for her problems, and, you know, she could have got us all some counseling, and I would venture to say things would have gone a whole lot better. You know what I mean? But my parents did not make the right choices, right? So this is the whole issue with boundaries. Like, how are you going to allow people to treat you? I mean, that is a huge issue for adult survivors, right? And so it's important for people, you know, to not allow ourselves to fall back into that trap of re-victimization, right? And then they go on to talk about this, George A. Boyd says, another priority for recovering adult children from these dysfunctional families must be to rebuild appropriate boundaries. And so that's the next section here. And it's really something. I mean, it's just like appropriate boundaries. I mean, it's very important, right? My sister's a prime example of this, right? My sister married a man who already had all kinds of issues when she married him. She was young, you know, not really young, but she not old either. She was 20 years old, and this guy was like had already been busted for, you know, all kinds of stuff. He had all kinds of charges against him and arrested, and then done some time even for some of the things that he had been doing, criminal activity. And he wasn't all that nice. So my sister was seeing this guy for a while, and then they were talking about getting married, and they actually were, you know, she was engaged to this guy, and then she broke it off. She didn't want to marry him because she found out a whole bunch of stuff about him that she wasn't happy with. Well, my mother forced her to marry him. Now, my sister could have ran away and like left the family and said, okay, I'm running away, I'm not marrying this man. But my mom pushed her to marry this guy, and my sister went for it. Instead of all my sister would have had to do was put her foot down and say, you're not marrying him, it's going to be me, so therefore it's my choice, my decision. Instead of that, here's my mom slapping my 20-year-old sister around. I mean, this is just the issue. I was 15 years old, younger than my sister, and my mother was still abusing me, you know, until I was 17 years old. So if that gives you any idea, here's my sister, 20 years old, getting ready to be married, and here's my mom slapping her around and beating her up because she won't marry this guy, this abusive guy who's already got all kinds of problems, and my sister could see this, right? So my sister didn't know how to put her foot down. You know, at the age of 20, she could have just said, look, I'm moving out. I'm not marrying this guy. You have no right to tell me who to marry. I'm 20 years old. What you know, and you don't have any right to be slapping me around either, or my sister, right? But she didn't. She was. I mean, my sister grew up in the same home I did, the same abuse, the same garbage, and you know, for her, you know, she just went along with it. So she married this guy. You know what I mean? And had a horrible marriage, 7 years of a horrible marriage. The only great thing that came out of that was my niece, which is her daughter. My niece is just the most wonderful person. I just love her dearly. Am I in contact with her? No, because I wrote the book, and I wrote a book, and I've gone public with my story, A Life of Death, The Redemption, and, not very many people in my family like that I've written this book, and there's only a few of us left, right? There's only 3 or 4 of us left, but, I don't care. I wrote that because the truth needs to be told. Truth is everything to me, and, silence is the issue. We're going to allow abusers to get away with what they do. Silence is a real huge problem, and so I thought, why wait till my dad's dead to write this story? That doesn't make any sense at all. I'm going to write this story now. You know what I mean? And I don't care who likes it or not because it's the truth, right? I wouldn't have wrote it if it wasn't. So my niece she wasn't hurt by it, but she kind of thought that I was trying to get her to take sides, and I really wasn't. So we're not in contact, but that's all right because I love her dearly, and she was the best thing that really happened to our family because she was a new baby that was born, and my sister, even though she was in this dysfunctional marriage, was doing the best job she could to be a good mother, and she really did do the best job she could. So. But here, my sister divorced this guy when my niece was 7. Thank God, got out of that marriage because because he was a real jerk and he still is today. And so she divorced him, right? And then pretty much didn't date or see anybody for years until Kimberly grew up because she had this fear that she would let some man into her life that would hurt Kimberly. And I think she knew that she was not going to be able because my sister cannot say no. She just lets people walk all over her. She lets a man treat her as badly as he wants to. She has no ability to set boundaries and say no, right? See, our parents didn't teach us how to do that because our parents were beating on us. They were hurting us. And we were not allowed to say no. You know what I mean? Like, we were abused by our parents. So that's the issue. My sister doesn't know how to say no. So when a man's going to hurt her, she just lets him, right? I mean, that's pathetic, right? But that's the truth. Now, me, on the other hand, I'm a little bit more self-preservation type, right? So I'm apt to actually hurt somebody who's out to try to do something to me, and I always have to warn people. I've actually had to warn a couple of people in my lifetime that, whatever their thoughts were, they better switch them around because I was capable of doing a whole lot more to them than they were to me, and so basically I was threatening their lives, you know what I mean? Because my life was being threatened. You know what I mean? And I thought, I'll go to the police, buddy, but you better not scare me because I have the ability to look after myself. I used to sleep with a knife when I was 8 years old, for God's sakes. And so, me and my sister's mind and thinking is completely different. But mine's not healthy either because I'm aggressive, right? Whereas my sister's very passive. My sister just allows people to do whatever she wants, and me, I'm apt to. That's why I'm kind of very careful about the type of people I hang around with, right? I like to hang around with good people who are gentle, who are nice, loving, caring people. I don't want to hang around with aggressive types, because it just enforces the way that I used to be for so long, which was aggressive, and it's not healthy, right? It's not a healthy way to be. So that's the issue. We all had boundary issues, but she married this man because my mom made her. At the age of 20, I would have said, "Forget you. I'm not marrying this guy, and I'll move out, and I won't talk to you anymore." Dad, my mom just wanted her out of the house. Really, that's why she did that. Because my sister was not living on her own; she was still living at home, and my mom just wanted her out of the house. So she was just like, "You're going to marry that man." You know what I mean? Forced my mom to marry that guy. So then my sister finally got into another relationship years and years and years later up here in Canada, and because she moved up here after I did, and she just let this guy just use her and take advantage of her. And she knew it at the time. And I told her, I said, well, make sure that he is doing that before you just blow him off. I said, make sure. But once we started to find out that that's really what he was doing, was just using her and taking advantage of her, she kept this relationship going for about 3 or 4 more years, which I told her, I said, look, at that point, I'm like, look, he is just taking advantage of you. And are you ever going to get what you need out of this relationship? It's only him. There's nothing about you in it. And, it turns out that he was seeing this other woman and moved in with this other woman and who had a really nice house and a big, and a car. And, he's just using women, right? That's what he does. So she finally got rid of him. But after 7 years. It took her 7 years to finally let this guy go. So this is the thing. My sister's had 2 relationships, and they've both been completely bizarre. And I mean, it's because she doesn't know how to set boundaries, right? It's really something. I hope that she will learn how to do that. It's so important. They said here that they must. So another priority for recovering adult children from these dysfunctional families must be to rebuild appropriate boundaries. It says they must relearn what is appropriate sexuality and what are legitimate ways to express displeasure or anger without injuring others or themselves. This is a huge issue for a lot of people. This appropriate sexuality stuff, and what are legitimate ways to express displeasure or anger without injuring others or themselves. And anger is a huge issue, and if you don't know how to properly express your anger and you're having issues with anger, angerresources.com is a really awesome website. We spent months, actually probably a month or two on it. That is angerresources.com, ANGERESOURCES, because they really go on to talk about, it's Michael Obsatz and Dave Decker. They talk about healthy anger. What's healthy anger, and what is anger that is twisted and perverted? Because there's all these manifestations of anger that are really abuse. They are abusive. It's damaging to yourself as well as other people around you. But anger is necessary. We do need to be able to be angry because anger is important. It's a warning sign that something's wrong, that we need to address something right away. You know what I mean? And so anger, just proper anger, normal anger is fine. But it's when it becomes distorted and out of control and abusive, or even abusive. That's when there's a problem. So that's a really great website for that information. That's ANGERESOURCES, angerresources.com. And I really like that website. And he also says here, George A. Boyd says, they must re-empower themselves to say no to relationships they do not want and that are not good for them. No to demands that they are not able to handle. So we have to know, that it is ultimately up to us, who we're going to allow in our lives. And if we don't like someone because for whatever reason, let's say somebody wants to date us or something, or ask us out, and we just feel very uncomfortable about this person, well, that's your warning sign that that's just not for you, And so many people will just go, they just think that they don't have a choice in the matter, and they don't even consider the fact that they have the right to say no. You don't have to enter into every relationship. That's my sister. Anybody who pays any attention to her at all, she's thinking that this is it. You know what I mean? So she'll stay with an abuser even though it's an abusive relationship, because she thinks that that's what's supposed to happen. You know what I mean? It's like whoever comes along, you just can't do that. I mean, I broke for a year because I was like, buddy, I'm going to push you out before you push me out. I'm going to push you out before you hurt me. Either, right? So I had to really go back and rethink that, because my sweetheart, I did love him, and I had to take a year off to myself to figure things out. It did take me a while. It took me a whole year. But my mom had just passed away, and I just lost my baby. So, I really needed a year off anyway just to get myself in shape. But the thing is there were other reasons for it, too. I left him because I didn't trust him. I didn't trust anybody. And I thought, well, that's no good. I love this guy, and here I am going to leave this relationship because I don't know how to set boundaries, and I don't know how to allow myself to trust people, because, anybody has the potential to hurt anybody if they want to hurt them. And the issue is that we do have to have these boundaries in place that say, okay, I'm not going to accept anybody, I'm not going to allow anybody to hurt me. So, and I'm going to say something if somebody does, and I'm going to be very cautious about entering into relationships until I, have a better handle on what I need, my needs, and how to be sort of safe in that, you know what I mean? Because there are ways that we can do it, and there's ways people can do it if you get that information. But if you weren't shown that as a child or as a young adult, or a teenager by any healthy people who had healthy relationships, it's really tricky to learn it on your own. It's almost, you have to kind of get that information from somewhere, right? So that's why I say just keep looking for that information, keep getting help. I'm doing self-help, but, if you need a counselor or a therapist, or if you're having a hard time, you don't have somebody to talk to, you call a crisis line. You do whatever you have to do, because you certainly deserve a better life. You certainly did not deserve to be abused, and I'm talking to survivors of abuse here. And so, you deserve to have a good life, but it's ultimately up to us. It's up to me what kind of life I'm going to have as an adult. As a child, I really couldn't help what was, what was happening to me. I was just stuck in the abuse. What can you do? As an adult, it is very much my choice what kind of life I want to have, and I didn't realize that until the age of 41. So I would hope that you wouldn't wait that long to figure that out. It took me a long time to figure that out. I wish I would have done it in my 20s, right? But I'm glad I did it anyway, because at least now I can start moving forward, right? So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I'll be back on tonight with my other show, Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. And also Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, right, just just prior to that. So that's blogtalkradio.com/dreamcatchers. So that's on tonight as well. And this is really interesting information. Tomorrow night I have Calethea Horton on the show. And Calethea Horton is the founder of OnOneAccordFoundation.org. And that's going to be a great show. I'm just going to read a little bit of information here. You can check my show page, and it does have all that information on it. But they are there's a retreat taking place, and Calethea Horton's going to come on and talk to us about the retreat and tell us a little bit about On One Accord, and it is to deal with the survivors of incest, right? And this is a retreat for survivors of incest, and so I hope everybody will go and check this out. And it airs adult incest. I'm just going to get this whole information here for you if I can bring this up quick enough, right? We've only got about a minute left. As a matter of fact, the show's not streaming live anymore, but this is on OneAccordFoundation.org, and this retreat's happening March 19th in San Diego. And so it's the Grand Del Mar in San Diego, and it's for adult incest rape survivors, AIRS, AIRS. And the retreat, it's $250, I believe. I'm going to read down through here. The retreat, I believe, it's $250, but there's all kinds of speakers going to be and psychiatrists and whatnot. There is guest speakers, Dr. Robert Geffner, PhD, ABN, ABPP, and Dr. Lindsay Alvis, PhD. And they're going to have like meditation. They're going to have mediation. They're going to have relaxation exercise classes program on how to continue living after rape by giving attendees a reason to survive. So this is Calethea Horton, the founder of OnOneAccord.org. So check out my show page here for Wednesday night because Wednesday night, that's when it's taking place, 7:30 Mountain Standard Time. And she's going to be on for an hour, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with her and finding out more about who she is, what she's doing, and what On One Accord Foundation is doing. And also there is a member of one of the people who works with Calethea Horton. His name is Grady Fox. He's making a feature-length documentary to bring attention to the subject of incest, right? And he's looking for survivors to interview and to possibly be featured in the film. So he says if anybody would like to be a part of that documentary, they can contact him, and that is Grady at OnOneAccordFoundation.org. And you can check that information out on my show page for tomorrow night. So be sure to do. I hope you will be here because that's going to be a great show. I really am looking forward to speaking to Calethea and finding out more about what's going on because this is great information, and I'm a survivor of incest. So I know this will be some really helpful information for people. So I hope you will pass the word. Thanks, everybody. Have a really good day. Take care of yourselves, and you hang in there because I'm telling you what, I want you to hang in there. So you hold on and you get some help because that's the reason I'm doing these shows. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother, right? So thanks for being here and take really good care of yourselves, okay? Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.